The Galactic Confederation had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. 7 alien species, each with their own strange bodies and even stranger cultures, had joined together long ago to create the most powerful alliance in the known universe. They were untouchable, unchallenged, and utterly unprepared for what was coming. Commander Tahoe stood on the gleaming bridge of the stellar wind, his 4 upper limbs crossed behind his back in the formal stance of his people. His skin shimmered with the blue-green patterns that showed his rank and lineage. The viewport before him showed the endless black of space, scattered with distant stars. "Commander," called out Officer Dury from her monitoring station, "the energy readings are getting stronger. Whatever it is, it's definitely using some kind of faster-than-light travel." Tahoe nodded slowly. The Confederation Council had sent him to this remote sector after their long-range sensors picked up unusual activity. Probably just another primitive species taking its first baby steps into the stars. He'd handled first contact missions 6 times before. They all went the same way. "Bring up the historical records," he ordered. "Let's see what we know about this part of space." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a star system with a yellow sun and 9 planets. The far third planet was marked as life-bearing, with basic information scrolling beside it. "Sol system," read Officer Keeman. "Surveys from 200 cycles ago showed developing life forms. No space travel capability. Recommended for check-in after 500 cycles." Tahoe snorted through his breathing slits. "And now they're trying FTL travel. After just 200 cycles, impossible." "Perhaps they're quick learners," suggested his second-in-command, Gia, her voice containing the musical tones of her species. "No species develops that quickly," said Tahoe dismissively. "More likely they stumbled onto some ancient technology and are playing with things they don't understand." The small fleet of 3 Confederation ships moved into position at the edge of the system. Standard procedure was simple: assess the newcomers, determine their technology level, and either welcome them as junior members of the Confederation or impose resource tributes in exchange for protection. The strong ruled the stars. That was simply how things worked. "No sign of them yet," reported Officer Dury, "but the energy signature is getting stronger." "Weapons status?" asked Tahoe casually. "All systems ready," replied the weapons officer. "But surely we won't need—" "Just a precaution," said Tahoe. "First impressions matter. These primitives should understand from the start who holds the power here." Suddenly the space before them seemed to ripple and tear. A swirling vortex of blue-white energy formed, growing larger by the second. "Recording everything," said Keeman excitedly. "Their FTL method is crude but effective. They're creating some kind of artificial wormhole." Tahoe leaned forward. "This should be interesting. Let's see what kind of tiny explorer ship they've managed to build." The vortex stabilized and something began to emerge. At first, Tahoe thought their sensors were malfunctioning. The object was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the stellar wind, which was itself the largest ship in the Confederation. "Fleet, that can't be right," he muttered. "Recalibrate the sensors." "Sensors are functioning perfectly, Commander," said Dury, her voice trembling slightly. "The object it's a ship, and it's exactly as large as it appears." As the massive vessel fully emerged from the vortex, the bridge crew fell silent. The ship was unlike anything in Confederation records. Its dark hull was covered in what appeared to be thick armor plating. Protruding from various points were what could only be weapons systems, dozens of them, of different sizes and designs. "Scan." "It," ordered Tahoe, trying to keep his voice steady. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported Keeman. "Power core is unlike anything in our database. And those are definitely weapons systems, extremely advanced ones." "This doesn't make sense," said Gia. "No newly spacefaring species builds warships as their first vessels. They build explorers, science ships, maybe small transports." Tahoe's mind raced. Had they somehow missed an advanced civilization in this sector? Had they underestimated these beings? "Open communications," he ordered. "Standard first contact protocols." As the communications officer worked to establish a connection, Tahoe studied the massive ship. Its design was both functional and intimidating. Whoever these beings were, they hadn't built this ship for peaceful exploration. They had built it for war. "Connection established," announced the communications officer. They're responding to our hail. Put it on the main screen, said Taiho, straightening his posture. The screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. It was pink-skinned, with fur on top of its head and strange round eyes. It wore some kind of uniform with symbols Taiho didn't recognize. "This is Captain Junho of the United Earthship Invincible," said the alien in a calm, measured voice. "To whom am I speaking?" Taiho felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't the excited, awed greeting of a species making first contact. This was the controlled, professional communication of an experienced spacefarer. Something had gone very wrong with the Confederation's information, and Taiho had a sinking feeling that his standard first contact protocols were about to become completely useless. Taiho adjusted his ceremonial collar, trying to appear calm and in control despite the turmoil in his mind. The massive human ship loomed on the view screen, dwarfing his own vessel, which had always seemed so impressive before this moment. "Greetings, Captain Junho of the UES Invincible," Taiho said, using the formal tones reserved for first contact. "I am Commander Taiho of the Galactic Confederation flagship Stellar Wind. We welcome you to charted space." The human captain nodded slightly. His pink face remained neutral, but Taiho thought he detected a slight upward curl at the edges of the human's mouth. "Thank you for your welcome, Commander," said Captain Junho. "Though I should clarify, this isn't our first time in this sector. Humanity has been exploring these stars for nearly 50 Earth years now." Taiho blinked rapidly, a sign of confusion in his species. "There must be some mistake. Our records show no advanced civilization in this region. Your star system was catalogued as pre-space flight less than 200 cycles ago." "No mistake," replied Junho. "We've established colonies on 15 planets across 3 neighboring systems. Perhaps your surveys need updating." Behind Taiho, the bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Jia, his second-in-command, moved closer to whisper in his ear. "How could we have missed 15 colonies? That's impossible." Taiho silently agreed. The Confederation's surveillance network was comprehensive. Nothing escaped their notice, or so they had always believed. "Captain Junho," Taiho said carefully, "our sensors detect no evidence of these colonies you mention. Perhaps if you could share their coordinates." "Of course," Junho replied. A moment later, data streamed across the Confederation computers. Officer Keeman gasped. "Commander, these are all locations we've surveyed. They're marked as uninhabited, or minimally developed, but the human data shows complex settlements with populations in the millions." Taiho's 4 hearts beat faster. "How is this possible?" Captain Junho's expression remained calm. "After our first contact with alien life went badly, we developed significant stealth technologies. Our colonies and ships are designed to have minimal detection signatures. Your sensors likely registered our presence as natural phenomena or background radiation." The implications hit Taiho like a physical blow. These humans had not only achieved spaceflight, but had developed technology advanced enough to hide entire worlds from Confederation detection. And they had done it all while building warships of unprecedented size. Pulling himself together, Taiho fell back on his training. The protocol for first contact was clear: establish dominance, assess technology, and determine terms for either membership or tribute. "Captain Junho," he said, his voice taking on a more authoritative tone, "the Galactic Confederation has maintained peace among the stars for thousands of years. All species who wish to join interstellar society must follow certain protocols. We'll need a complete assessment of your technological capabilities." Junho nodded politely. "We're happy to exchange some basic information." "And," Taiho continued, "you'll need to dismantle these excessive military vessels. The Confederation provides protection to all member species. These weapons of war have no place in a peaceful galaxy." To Taiho's surprise, several of the humans on the bridge exchanged glances, and some even smiled. Not the nervous, submissive smiles he was accustomed to seeing from newly contacted species, but expressions that seemed almost amused. "Commander," said Junho carefully, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. The Invincible isn't a warship, it's just a standard patrol vessel. We use it for routine security around our outer colonies." Taiho stared at the screen, certain he had misheard. That's not possible. Your patrol vessel is 3 times the size of our largest battleship. Different design philosophies, I suppose, Junho replied with a slight shrug. If you'd like to see what we consider a battleship, I could request one from Fleet Command, though it would take a few days to arrive. The bridge of the stellar wind fell silent. Taiho felt a cold sensation spreading through his body. If this behemoth was merely a patrol ship, what would their actual warships be like? Perhaps, Taiho said slowly, we should discuss your species' development. It's unusual for a newly spacefaring race to focus so heavily on military technology. Captain Junho nodded. I understand your confusion. I'm transmitting some educational materials on human history now. It might help explain our approach to space exploration. The data transfer was quick, and Officer Dury began displaying the information on the main screen. The bridge crew watched in growing horror as images and text documented the human story. Thousands of years of nearly constant warfare, weapons evolving from simple clubs to atomic bombs in a relatively short span. Countless conflicts whirled: wars, Cold Wars, border skirmishes, and civil uprisings. This can't be accurate, whispered Jia. No species could survive such constant conflict. Actually, said Junho as if hearing her, those conflicts drove much of our technological development. Competition between nations led to rapid advances in everything from medicine to computing to space travel. Taiho struggled to process this information. The Confederation species had all evolved through cooperation, with warfare being rare and limited. The idea of a species that developed through constant combat was terrifying, and now these humans were in space, with stealth technology, and massive ships they casually described as patrol vessels. Captain, Taiho said, trying to maintain his diplomatic tone, I believe we need to consult with the Confederation Council before proceeding further. This is an unusual situation. Of course, Junho replied amiably. We're in no rush. Humanity has learned patience over the centuries. As Taiho prepared to end the transmission, a thought occurred to him. If these humans had been in space for decades without the Confederation noticing, what else might they be hiding? And more importantly, what had happened during their first contact with alien life that had led them to develop such formidable stealth and military technology? For the first time in his long career, Commander Taiho felt genuinely afraid of what he might discover. The next 6 hours were the longest of Commander Taiho's life. While he waited for instructions from the Confederation Council, he had ordered his small fleet to maintain position, surrounding the human vessel Invincible. 2 more Confederation ships had arrived as reinforcements, bringing their total to 5 vessels against the single human ship. Taiho paced the bridge, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The Council's message had been clear but unsettling. Determine the full extent of human military capabilities. If they refuse inspection, use standard compliance procedures. In other words, intimidate them into submission, just as the Confederation had done with dozens of other emerging species over the millennia. Open a channel to the human vessel, Taiho ordered, straightening his uniform and putting on what his species considered a stern expression. Captain Junho's face appeared on screen. He looked relaxed, almost bored. Captain, Taiho began, injecting authority into his voice. The Confederation Council has reviewed your situation. For the safety and stability of this sector, we require your vessel to power down weapon systems and prepare for boarding and inspection. Junho's expression didn't change. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Commander. Our protocols don't allow for foreign boarding of our vessels except under specific diplomatic arrangements, which we haven't established yet. Taiho had expected this. New species always resisted at first, but they learned quickly enough. Captain, he said firmly, you are outnumbered 5 to 1. Your ship, impressive as it may be, cannot hope to prevail against an entire Confederation battle group. I suggest you reconsider. For the first time, Junho smiled, not a nervous smile, but the kind of smile an adult might give a child who has said something charmingly naive. Commander Taiho, he said gently, I understand you're following your protocols, but I strongly suggest that your vessels power down their weapons and that we continue our discussions peacefully. Taiho felt a flash of anger. This human was speaking to him as if he were the inexperienced one. He nodded to his weapons officer. Captain Junho, the Confederation has maintained peace for 3,000 years by ensuring all member species understand their place in the galactic order. Sometimes a demonstration is necessary. We will fire a single warning shot across your bow. Junho's expression changed to one of concern. Commander, I really don't recommend... Taiho cut the transmission with a wave of his hand. Fire. The lead. Confederation vessel discharged its main weapon. A concentrated beam of energy that had broken the will of countless species before. The beam lanced out, brilliant blue against the blackness of space, and struck the side of the Invincible. And nothing happened. The energy simply dissipated across the hull of the human ship, like water spreading across a surface. There was no damage, not even a scorch mark. Impossible, breathed Officer Keeman from the sensor station. They absorbed the energy somehow. And Commander, their defensive systems are adjusting in real time. They're actually learning from our weapon. Signature. Before Taiho could respond, Officer Duri called out in a panicked voice. Multiple targeting systems activating across the human vessel. They're targeting every critical system on all 5 of our ships simultaneously. How many weapons? Demanded Taiho. I'm counting over 300 separate targeting locks, Duri replied, her voice shaking. Commander, they could destroy our entire fleet in seconds. The view screen activated again, showing Captain Junho. His expression was now serious, all trace of the earlier smile gone. Commander Taiho, he said calmly, I understand the impulse to establish dominance. Humanity has a long history with that particular drive, but I'm hoping we can resolve this peacefully before anyone gets hurt. Taiho felt trapped. His ships were clearly outgunned despite their numerical advantage, but backing down would mean admitting weakness, something the Confederation simply did not do. All ships prepare for full engagement, he ordered, his voice tight. The humans would learn respect, regardless of their technological advantages. Just as his weapons officers began the firing sequence, Officer Keeman shouted, Commander, multiple hyperspace ruptures detected, large ones. The space around them seemed to tear open as 5 massive vortexes formed. From each emerged a human vessel, each one larger and more heavily armed than the Invincible. The ships moved with surprising grace despite their size, taking up defensive positions around their compatriot. Identify them, Taiho ordered, his mouth suddenly dry. The largest appears to be their flagship, reported Kimin. The others are... Commander, our sensors are having trouble classifying them. They don't match any known ship designs. The view screen changed again, now showing a different human. This one was older, with grey fur on his head and lines etched into his face. His uniform was more elaborate than Junho's, with additional insignia. This is Admiral Sunwoo of the United Earth Ship Guardian, the human said, his deep voice perfectly calm. Commander Taiho, I understand there's been a misunderstanding between our forces. Taiho stared at the screen, then at the tactical display showing the 6 human ships now surrounding his fleet. The vessel identified as Guardian was enormous, easily 10 times the size of his flagship. Sensor readings were showing energy levels that defied belief. Our sensors are indicating your ships are generating their own gravity field, said Jia. Softly beside him, Admiral Sunwoo nodded as if he'd heard her. The Guardian-class battleships do create their own gravitational field, yes, a side effect of our drive system. Taiho felt lightheaded. What kind of technology could create artificial gravity as a mere side effect? Admiral, he said, trying to keep his voice steady, the Confederation welcomes peaceful dialogue with all species. Perhaps we can start our discussions over. Sunwoo nodded. An excellent suggestion. Captain Junho speaks highly of your diplomatic approach, despite the recent demonstration. With your permission, I'd like to invite you and your senior officers aboard the Guardian to continue our talks. Taiho looked around at his bridge crew, seeing his own shock and fear reflected in their faces. The Confederation had always been the dominant power, dictating terms to new species from a position of unquestionable strength. Now, in the space of a few hours, everything had changed. We would be honored, Admiral, Taiho replied, because what other choice did he have? As preparations began for the diplomatic party to shuttle over to the human battleship, Taeho stood alone at the viewport, staring at the massive Guardian. Its hull was dark and smooth, bristling with weapon systems whose purpose he could only guess at. It hung in space like a predator, patient and confident. For the first time in his career, Commander Taeho understood what it felt like to be the weaker species making first contact with a vastly superior civilization. And he didn't like it one bit. The shuttle journey from the stellar wind to the human battleship Guardian took only minutes, but to Commander Taeho, it felt like crossing into another world. As their small craft approached the massive vessel, he could see details of its hull that weren't visible from a distance. Strange patterns etched into the dark metal, what appeared to be repair drones moving across the surface, and weapons, systems that retracted smoothly into hidden compartments as they passed. "It's beautiful in a terrifying way," whispered Gia beside him. The other Confederation officers sat in stunned silence. When the shuttle docked, they were greeted by a human female in a crisp uniform. "Welcome aboard the Guardian," she said with a slight bow. "I'm Lieutenant Hyun. Admiral Sunwoo is waiting for you in the command center." Taeho expected to be led through narrow utilitarian corridors, typical of military vessels. Instead, they entered what appeared to be a wide boulevard, lined with plants and soft lighting. People, human and otherwise, moved about purposefully or gathered in small groups. "This can't be right," said Officer Keeman, looking around in confusion. "This looks like a city, not a warship." Lieutenant Hyun smiled. "The Guardian carries a permanent crew of nearly 20,000, plus their families. The central sections are designed to provide a comfortable living environment. Families on a battleship." Taeho couldn't hide his shock. In the Confederation, military vessels were strictly functional, with crews rotating through short deployments. "Of course," replied Hyun as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Many of our missions last for years. People need their families, communities, and open spaces." As they walked, Taeho noticed other species mingling with the humans, beings he didn't recognize from the Confederation's extensive archives. "Who are they?" he asked, pointing to a tall, slender being with iridescent skin. "That's a Luthian," explained Hyun. "They joined the Earth Alliance about 30 years ago after we helped them fight off raiders in their home system." Before Taeho could ask more questions, they arrived at a large door marked Command Center. It slid open silently, revealing a vast room filled with holographic displays and busy workstations. At the center stood Admiral Sunwoo, studying a three-dimensional map of what appeared to be their current sector. "Commander Taeho," Sunwoo said warmly, extending a hand in what Taeho recognized as a human greeting gesture. "Welcome aboard the Guardian. I hope this visit will mark the beginning of a productive relationship between our peoples." Taeho performed his own species' formal greeting, trying to regain his diplomatic composure. "Admiral, we appreciate your hospitality. The Confederation has many questions about humanity's unexpected presence in this sector." Sunwoo smiled. "I'm sure you do, and we have questions about the Confederation as well. But first, would you like a tour? Understanding often begins with seeing." The next 2 hours transformed Taeho's understanding of humans completely. The Guardian wasn't just a weapon of war, it was a self-contained world. They passed through hydroponics gardens, where fresh food was grown in staggering quantities, recreation areas where crew members exercised or relaxed, educational facilities where children of various species learned together, and medical centers, with technology that made the Confederation's finest healing arts look primitive. "Our survival strategy has always been about preparation," explained Sunwoo as they walked. "Earth's history taught us to expect the worst while hoping for the best. Every human vessel is built to be self-sufficient for years if necessary." "But the weapons," said Taeho, still struggling to comprehend the scale of human military power. "Your focus on weapons technology is unsettling." Sunwoo's expression grew serious. "When diplomacy fails, conflicts should be ended quickly and decisively. Our weapons are designed to do exactly that, minimize suffering by providing overwhelming force when necessary." They paused at a viewing area overlooking a massive internal space where smaller vessels were being maintained. Taeho counted at least 50 craft that would qualify as significant warships in the Confederation fleet. "You mentioned that humanity has made contact with other species," said Gia. "How many?" "We've established peaceful relations with 23 species so far," replied Sunwoo. 14 have chosen to join the Earth Alliance formally. Taiho nearly stumbled in shock. 23, the Confederation has records of only 12 spacefaring species besides our own 7 members. Sunwoo nodded thoughtfully. Most of the species we've encountered are on the galactic rim, far from Confederation space. Many were struggling against various threats, resource depletion, environmental collapse, or predatory neighbors. Predatory neighbors? Asked Taiho. Before Sunwoo could answer, a soft chime sounded and a voice spoke from hidden speakers. "Admiral, priority message from Colony Horizon. They're reporting an attack in progress." Sunwoo's face hardened instantly. "Put it through to my personal display." A small hologram appeared before the Admiral, showing another human in a dust-covered uniform. Behind them, smoke rose from damaged buildings. "Admiral, 3 wreck harvest ships dropped out of hyperspace 30 minutes ago. They've already taken nearly 100 colonists. Our defense units are engaged but outmatched. We need immediate assistance." "Help is on the way, Governor," replied Sunwoo calmly. "Hold position and focus on protecting the remaining civilians." The transmission ended, and Sunwoo turned to Taiho with an expression that sent chills down the commander's spine. "It seems you'll get to see how humanity responds to threats against our people," said the Admiral. His voice remained calm, but there was something underneath it now. A cold, focused anger that made Taiho instinctively step back. "The wreck?" asked Taiho, his heart's racing. "You're in conflict with the wreck?" Sunwoo's eyes narrowed slightly. "You know them?" Taiho hesitated, then nodded. "The Confederation has an arrangement with the wreck Imperium. They stay in their territory and we provide certain resources annually." "You pay them tribute," said Sunwoo flatly, "to leave you alone." Taiho wanted to argue, to explain the complex diplomatic realities, but found he couldn't. The Admiral had stated the simple truth. The mighty Confederation, ruler of the galaxy, paid protection money to the wreck because fighting them was deemed too costly. "Commander," said Sunwoo, "would you and your officers care to observe our response from the tactical center? It might help you understand humanity better than any tour or conversation could." As they moved quickly through the corridors, toward what Taiho assumed would be the ship's combat control center, he found himself both terrified and fascinated. These humans, with their strange mix of peaceful communities and overwhelming military power, were about to engage the wreck, the most feared predatory species in known space. What happened next would either confirm his worst fears about humanity or change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The tactical center of the Guardian hummed with focused energy. Unlike the chaotic command centers Taiho was familiar with during crisis situations, the human operators moved with practiced precision, their voices calm and clear. Admiral Sunwoo stood at the center, surrounded by 3-dimensional displays showing the battle group's approach to Colony Horizon. 6 massive ships moving in perfect formation, crossing vast distances in what seemed like impossibly short time. "Entering the Horizon system in 30 seconds, announced a young human officer. Taiho and his fellow Confederation representatives stood to one side, forgotten for the moment as the humans prepared for combat. He had seen the wreck only once, at a formal tribute ceremony centuries ago. Their tall, insectoid forms and clicking mandibles had haunted his dreams for years afterward. "I don't understand," whispered Gia. "The Freck harvester ships are heavily armed. Even the Confederation avoids direct conflict with them. What do these humans hope to accomplish?" "Display planetary situation," ordered Sunwoo. The main hologram shifted to show 3 angular grey ships hovering over a small settlement. Beam weapons fired from the ships into the colony, while smaller craft shuttled between the surface and the harvesters. "Life signs?" asked Sunwoo. "Detecting approximately 87 human captives aboard the harvesters," replied another officer. "Still alive, likely being prepared for stasis." Taiho shuddered. Everyone knew what happened to species harvested by the wreck. They became food, hosts for wreck eggs, or subjects for their cruel experiments. No one spoke of it openly. "Battle plan." "Theta 3, said Sunwoo calmly. "Priority is hostage recovery with minimal collateral damage. Launch rescue teams." The view screen showed smaller craft launching from the Guardian and its sister ships, sleek, fast vessels that Taiho guessed were fighters, and larger, more heavily armored craft that must be troop transports. "Shouldn't we attempt communication first?" asked Taiho, unable to contain himself. "The Confederation protocols for wreck encounters require negotiation before any hostile action." Admiral Sunwoo turned to him with an expression of mild surprise, as if he'd forgotten the Confederation officers were present. "Commander Taiho," he said quietly, "the wreck are currently loading my people into their ships like cattle. They intend to eat them or worse. There is nothing to negotiate." The battle group emerged from hyperspace directly above the colony. The wreck ships immediately began to turn, clearly surprised by the sudden appearance of 6 massive vessels. What happened? Next wasn't the extended, brutal space battle Taiho had expected. It wasn't even really a battle. Precise beams from the human fighters struck the wreck harvesters' engine systems, not destroying them, but disabling their ability to escape. Other beams targeted weapon systems with surgical accuracy. Meanwhile, the troop transports attached themselves to the wreck ships' hulls like remoras on ocean predators. "Boarding teams have breached all 3 harvesters," reported an officer, encountering moderate resistance. The holographic display showed the interior of the wreck ships, with human soldiers moving through corridors, engaging wreck warriors with weapons that seemed to stun rather than kill. Other teams moved directly to where the captives were held, cutting through barriers and securing frightened colonists. "This is impossible," murmured Officer Keeman. "The Freck are the most feared warriors in the galaxy. How are the humans defeating them so easily?" "Not defeating," corrected Gia, pointing to the display. "Look, they're avoiding killing them when possible. This isn't a battle, it's a rescue operation." She was right. The humans moved with purpose but restraint, seeming more concerned with retrieving their people than punishing their attackers. "All hostages secured," announced a voice over the communications system. 85 recovered alive, 2 requiring immediate medical attention, beginning withdrawal. "What about the wreck commander?" asked Sunwoo. "Captured and secured, Admiral. Bringing him aboard as ordered." Taiho checked the time display on his translator device. The entire operation, from emergence from hyperspace to the recovery of all hostages, had taken less than 40 minutes. "Is this typical?" he asked Admiral Sunwoo, unable to keep the awe from his voice. Sunwoo shrugged slightly. "We've had practice. The wreck have attempted raids on our colonies 7 times in the past year. They're persistent, I'll give them that." 2 hours later, Taiho found himself in a secure meeting room aboard the Guardian. Beside him sat Gia and his other officers, all still looking shell-shocked. Across the table, Admiral Sunwoo was joined by several high-ranking humans and representatives of other species Taiho didn't recognize. And at the far end, heavily restrained but conscious, sat the Freck commander. Its chitinous exoskeleton gleamed, dully under the lights, and its compound eyes darted nervously between the humans and the Confederation representatives. "So you work with the soft ones?" the wreck finally clicked out, its translator rendering the words in a harsh, mechanical voice. "The tribute payers ally with the hard ones." Taiho flinched at the implied insult, but before he could respond, Admiral Sunwoo spoke. "No alliance has been formed yet," he said calmly, "but I believe one might be beneficial to both humanity and the Confederation." The wreck made a sound that might have been laughter. "The galaxy changes. The soft ones seek protection from the hard ones, as it should be." Sunwoo ignored the wreck and turned to Taiho. "Commander, humanity has been exploring and mapping this galaxy for decades. We've identified 27 spacefaring species, including the 7 members of your Confederation. 12 of those species are currently being exploited by predatory powers like the wreck." He gestured, and a galactic map appeared above the table, with colored indicators showing the location of various civilizations. Taiho was stunned by the scope of human exploration. They had mapped regions the Confederation had never even approached. "We've already made contact with most of these exploited species," continued Sunwoo. "Some have joined our alliance, others are considering it. We're offering you the same opportunity." "You want the Confederation to join your alliance?" asked Taiho incredulously. We have been the dominant power in this sector for 3,000 years. Sun Wu smiled slightly. No, Commander. I'm proposing a partnership between equals. The Confederation has history, cultural influence, and established diplomatic channels. Humanity brings other strengths. The Wreck Commander shifted in its restraints. The hard ones speak of partnership now, but they will rule, as we tried to rule. It is the way of things. That's where you're wrong, said Sun Wu, finally addressing the Wreck directly. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to stop creatures like you from treating other sentient beings as resources to be harvested. He turned back to Tai-Ho. The balance of power has shifted, Commander, but this doesn't have to be a threat to the Confederation. It can be an opportunity. Together we can create a galaxy where developing civilizations are protected, not exploited, where first contact means welcome, not subjugation or tribute demands. Tai-Ho looked at the Wreck, then at the humans, then at his own officers. For thousands of years, the Confederation had maintained its position through careful diplomacy, backed by the implicit threat of its military power. They had paid tribute to the Wreck not out of weakness, they told themselves, but out of a pragmatic desire to avoid costly conflict. And now these humans had arrived with their massive ships and their casual dismantling of Wreck harvesters, speaking of partnership and protection. The Confederation Council will need to consider your proposal carefully, Tai-Ho said finally. This represents a significant change to the Galactic Order. Sun Wu nodded. Of course. In the meantime, we'll escort you back to your ships, and we can begin formal diplomatic talks in neutral territory. As they prepared to depart, Tai-Ho found himself at a viewport, staring at the massive silhouette of the Guardian against the backdrop of stars. Beside him, unexpectedly, stood the Wreck Commander, flanked by human guards. The hard ones will change everything, clicked the Wreck softly. They are not like the others. They do not fear. They protect what is theirs. And that makes them dangerous? Asked Tai-Ho. The Wreck's mandibles twitched in what might have been its species' version of a humorless smile. To us, yes. To you, perhaps not, if you are wise. As the shuttle carried them back to the stellar wind, Tai-Ho thought about everything he had seen. The humans' massive ships with their gardens and schools, their precise, restrained combat, capabilities, their talk of protection and partnership rather than dominance. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had operated on the principle that the strong ruled and the weak served or paid tribute. The humans seemed to be proposing something entirely different. A galaxy where strength existed to protect, not to exploit. It was terrifying. It was revolutionary. And deep down, in a place Tai-Ho had never acknowledged even to himself, it was something he had always hoped for. As the Confederation fleet prepared to depart for formal diplomatic talks, Tai-Ho cast one last look at the human battleship Guardian. What other surprises, he wondered, might these strange pink-skinned beings bring to a galaxy that had grown far too comfortable with its ancient hierarchies? Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same again.